The janitor's footsteps echoed softly in the long, empty hallway, his mop sloshing through the faint glow of the school's flickering lights. It was late, far later than he wished to still be working. But Bills didn't wait for rest. His uniform was faded and the smell of cleaning solution clung to his skin. As he bent to gather discarded papers and candy wrappers left behind by careless students, his eyes caught something unusual near a trash bin. It was a violin, dusty, cracked along the neck, one string dangling loose. The wood looked worn but carried the ghost of something once beautiful. He paused, staring at it, unsure why his chest tightened at the sight. Slowly he picked it up, brushing away the dirt with calloused fingers. For a moment, memories of his late wife filled his mind, her soft humming while cooking, the way she used to sway to music with their baby in her arms. His throat tightened. Just then he sensed eyes watching him. Turning, he saw his young son, standing silently at the doorway of the hallway. The boy was small, withdrawn, his gaze locked not on his father but on the violin. His silence had lasted for years, and yet there was a flicker of something alive in his stare. Curiosity, maybe even longing. The janitor knelt, holding the violin out. "It's broken," he muttered softly, almost apologetically, though he wasn't sure to whom. Still, he placed it gently into his son's hands. The boy clutched it carefully as if it were treasure, and for the first time in a long time, the father felt hope stir in the quiet. At home that night, the janitor sat at the kitchen table with the violin laid out in front of him like a wounded bird. The house was small and quiet, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound filling the space. His son sat across from him, chin resting on his folded arms, eyes never leaving the instrument. The father turned the violin over in his rough hands, inspecting the crack along its neck and the loose strings. He wasn't a musician, didn't know the first thing about repairing such a delicate thing. But he knew how to fix broken mops, busted chairs, leaky pipes, and so with a roll of tape, a bit of glue, and all the patience he had left in him, he began to mend what he could. His hands were steady, though his heart was unsure. Every so often, he glanced up and saw the way his son's eyes followed his movements, bright, intent, as if watching something sacred. For years the boy had carried silence like a heavy cloak, refusing to speak after losing his mother. But tonight there was a different kind of silence in the room. Not heavy, not suffocating. It was charged, waiting. When the father finally set the violin down, patched and uneven but whole enough to hold together, he slid it gently across the table. "It's not perfect," he whispered, his voice breaking with both apology and hope, "but maybe it can still make a sound." The boy lifted the violin slowly, almost reverently, and cradled it beneath his chin. His small fingers trembled as they found their place on the strings. The bow scraped across, releasing a trembling, fragile note. It wavered, thin and broken, yet in that moment it filled the room like a prayer. For the first time in years, the boy's lips curled into a small, fleeting smile, and the father, watching, felt something shift inside him, a spark that told him their silence might not last forever. The night of the school showcase arrived with a restless energy. The gymnasium was filled with folding chairs and chatter, parents and children bustling about, laughter echoing against the high walls. The janitor sat in the far back row, his uniform still on beneath a worn jacket. He had come straight from his shift, hands rough and stained, eyes weary. But tonight his exhaustion was wrapped in nervousness because his son, the boy who had not spoken a word in years, was about to step on stage with nothing but a patched violin. He watched as other children performed, bright voices singing, confident fingers tapping piano keys, giggles from dance routines. Then came his son's turn. The room quieted as the boy walked onto the stage, small and pale beneath the bright lights, the patched violin tucked under his arm. His steps were hesitant, yet there was something steady in his gaze, as if the instrument gave him courage. The janitor's heart pounded as his son positioned the violin under his chin, the bow trembling in his grip. For a moment it seemed as if the silence would swallow him whole. Then he drew the bow across the strings. The first notes wavered, soft and uncertain. A few people in the audience tilted their heads, expecting the fragile sound of a broken instrument. But then something extraordinary happened. The melody deepened, steadying with every stroke of the bow. The boy's fingers moved with unexpected grace, coaxing from the battered violin a sound that was hauntingly beautiful. It wasn't polished or perfect, but raw and aching, a voice born from silence. The music poured into the room like a confession, carrying grief, longing, and something tender that words could never hold. One by one, the restless audience fell into stillness. Teachers who had been busy whispering stopped mid-sentence. Students leaned forward in their chairs, and parents clasped their hands to their chests. Tears welled in more than a few eyes. The melody filled every corner of the gym, reaching even the janitor in the back row, striking him so deeply that his breath caught in his throat. In that moment, it wasn't a boy playing a broken violin. It was a soul speaking. Finally, after years of silence, and the world seemed to pause just to listen, the final note lingered in the air like a fragile thread, hanging in silence before dissolving into the vast hush of the gym. For a long moment, no one moved, as if the entire room was afraid to break the spell. Then suddenly, a swell of applause erupted, loud, thunderous, and overflowing with emotion. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, some even wiping tears from their cheeks. The boy lowered his bow, his small chest heaving with uneven breaths, his eyes wide as if he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. His shoulders shook, not with fear, but with the weight of finally being heard. From the back of the room, the janitor rose, his own tears streaming freely. He had always been invisible here, just the man who swept floors and emptied bins. But tonight, none of that mattered. All anyone could see was the boy who had just touched their souls. The father hurried forward, weaving through the standing crowd until he reached the edge of the stage. His son looked down at him, violin still clutched tightly as if afraid to let go. Then, for the first time since his mother's passing, the boy parted his lips. A faint trembling whisper escaped, "Dad." The word was small, but it struck the janitor harder than any thunderclap. His knees weakened as he reached up, arms open. The boy didn't hesitate. He rushed into his father's embrace, the patched violin pressed between them. The father held him tightly, burying his face in his son's hair, his tears falling freely. Around them, the applause swelled even louder, echoing off the walls. But the world had shrunk down to just the two of them, father and son, stitched back together by the broken violin song. In that moment, grief loosened its grip and silence finally gave way to voice. The janitor whispered into his son's ear, voice breaking with love and pride, "I hear you, son. I hear you." And for the first time in years, the boy smiled, not a fleeting curve, but a true radiant smile. The world outside kept clapping, but for them, time had stopped, held still by music that needed no words.